Today, as you can see, we are going to build a computer based on an Intel 486DX2 CPU. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I've never had a 486 and the market for the past 2 years has gone crazy about this kind of thing. A VLB motherboard can cost you around $100 on eBay, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, these are computers from 30 years ago. They are practically useless today, so I don't understand the point of selling these components at these very high prices, but oh well. So today we are going to build a 486, because that's how I decided and because I had all the components for free. A 486 computer is the best machine to play old MS-DOS games from the beginning of the MS-DOS era until 1984-1995, so it's pretty much my kind of thing. At the moment, due to the COVID-19 situation here in Italy, I can't go out of my house, I can't go out at all, and like me, all the other people I know who might have useful pieces for this build, so I'll go to build this machine with the pieces I have at home. Maybe some components might be a little anachronistic, but in the end, who cares? I mean, I hope all the parts work well. But let's talk about the current components. First of all, this classic Intel 486DX2 CPU at 66 MHz, the classic of the classics in the 486 line. There are cheaper ones, such as the SX class that does not have a mathematical processor, and better performing like the Intel 486DX4 at 100 MHz. The DX2 was introduced to the market in 1992 and has since reigned on PC games until the introduction of 3D acceleration, when it was supplanted by Pentiums, an iconic processor for playing iconic games. Following 4 SIMs of RAM of 4 MB each for a total of 16 MB. For the motherboard I choose, or rather I happen to have, an Intel motherboard with VESA local bus. I haven't been able to find much on the internet. It seems to be an Intel Mobo, or so I saw it on sale on some sites, which makes sense because it does not have many jumpers to set the CPU. I have another VLB Mobo which I would like to use, but which does not work, which has a lot of jumpers for every type of 486 released on the market. And that I got it with a 486 GPU branded ST, which I tried on this and that works. So I mean, nothing fancy, but it will do the job. For the graphics card here I decided to use this, a Quadtel VGA VLB card apparently, or at least that's the BIOS. A rather standard card, it has 1 MB of RAM on board, and it's not the best, but we will see how it behaves. For peripheral management I have this card, still VLB, for IDE and floppy disk. This is quite useful, as it has 2 IDE connectors, and given the case that I will use, there will be convenience for connecting the hard disk and the CD drive with 2 separate cables. If you exclude a SCSI controller that I don't think it works, these are the only VLB cards that I have, and so far I have never had the opportunity to use them, so I'm very curious to see how they behave. For the hard disk I choose this Connor from about 1995 and should have an 850 MB, absolutely sufficient amount to install MS-DOS and games, and also for Windows 3.1 actually, but this is not for this video. Following a very classic 1.44 MB 3.5-inch floppy drive and another standard CD drive. This is all for the hardware situation. Of course I'm going to use that little heatsink in the middle on the CPU. I mean, it is not required, but this heats up very easily, and heatsink like this that is mounted directly on the surface will calm my nightmares and my soul. But now Let's get to the most aesthetically pleasant piece of the whole build. I'm going to use this case. This thing is a beast, it's huge, it's a full tower giant. Let me measure it. Yes, it is 64 centimeters tall. Clearly it has a wonderful red display for megahertz, and just below the indicator we have 3 small lights, one yellow for the turbo button, and when it is on it says only turbo, immediately after a red light for the hard disk, and to the very right a small green light bulb to remind us that the computer is turned on. I love this stuff. To the complete left on the panel could not miss the lock of our computer. Unfortunately I do not have the key, but it is locked on the on mode, so it is not a big deal. The 2 buttons in the center are clearly for reset and turbo mode. Another reason why I love this case is located in the upper right corner, and it is this big red switch, very IBM stylish. The noise is beautiful. It's this is something, you know? Not all that glitters is gold, however. This case suffers from a big problem, as can also be seen from the top of the case. It is rust. I had it with a huge donation of computers from a company that produced microcars in the 90s. Do you know microcars, yeah? Anyway, the things I was given were many, but all in very questionable conditions, and this case has spent at least the last 10 years in a shed open to the elements, so I cleaned it and wiped it inside, but I could not do so much. Let me show you. As you can see, the bottom is very rusty, fortunately not damaged. It is, however, surface rust, but still. Leaving aside the inside, the thing that bothers me the most is the back of the computer, which has these small little seams of rust all around the screws, on the power supply, on the fan, on the expansion slots, and so on. It is not in excellent condition, but it has the red megahertz display, the red power switch. It is ridiculously large, I could not use it. This is the sentence that encompasses all this build. That's how things go today, very well. Let's start from the beginning, namely the CPU. Mount it in its nice socket and then mount the heatsink, of which we insert the wire in the closure of the socket. We will immediately mount the RAM in the respective slots. Now let's talk about my favorite peripherals, floppy drives and hard drives. The case unfortunately only has 2 front slots, but to mount the hard disk it has 2 internal 5¼ inches bay. So we are going to mount this bracket taken from an old and broken Seagate ST124, kind of straightforward. Now, like all the other slots in the case, even the front ones are from 5¼ so to mount this floppy drive from 3½, I will have to use this adapter bay, in which the front plastic is still to be cut away, which will be done in just 1 second. Not bad really, the adapter bay is not yellowed, but it is precisely this color, and in a certain way I like that these colors do not match perfectly. But we will talk about it later, because now it is time to assemble all the components in the case, with a nice speedy editing. I was able to correctly mount the jumpers, even if the display shows 16 MHz and 8 MHz, which is not true, but I think you can adjust it on the display PCB. The only flaw is that I was unable to place the LED for the hard disk apparently. Okay, now we mount the CD drive and the floppy drive. Oh wait, but there are 3 slots. I could put something else. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Now it's time to reassemble everything. Oh, before it is too late, I haven't forgotten about the sound card, at least not until now. I have decided that I will use the Sound Blaster Vibra 16 because it is the one I currently have around. It is one of the last of the creative for ISA slots, and honestly it is not too much. It is from 1997 and this will absolutely require an update, indeed a downgrade to be precise. Now let's go to configure hard drives and peripherals in the BIOS. The hard disk is a Conner with 1061 cylinders, 63 sectors and 16 heads. The floppy drive is a 1.44 MB 3.5 inches and the floppy drive B is 1.2 MB 5.25 inches. We write on CMOS, press exit and restart. And we have disk failure, which is not a good sign, and the floppy drive does not start. Once the correct floppy is inserted, it loads up to a point and then stops. I will have a lot of work to do. Okay, once I remove the hard drive in the BIOS, I can boot from the installation disk, and if I run fdisk, it clearly tells me that there are no hard drives installed. Digging around, I noticed that in BIOS there is the option for automatic hard disk recognition, but it does not seem to find it, so I think the HDD it is very dead. Okay, I put another hard drive. This is definitely more modern. It is a 4.3 GB Caviar by Western Digital and it seems to work, even if due to the limitation of the BIOS I am blocked from using 473 MB. Or maybe not. I have enough idea to install eZeta drive and to use all the disk space in 2 or 3 partitions. Let's do it! I installed eZeta drive and now I have to install the drivers for everything else. It will be funny. Okay, it's finished and it's looking great. I had to make some changes however. For some reason the CD drive refused to work on a different IDE connector, so I found a long IDE cable and configured the hard disk as master and the CD drive as slave, and now it seems to work everything. But in order to be inserted correctly I had to move it to the lower bay. The same thing with floppy drives, because the orientation of the ribbon cable, the best configuration was this. I also configured the display according to the correct megahertz. Apparently this display does not detect the processor speed at all. It just lights on and shows an arbitrary number, which you can choose by setting the jumpers on its logic board. So it was not difficult to set the 66 MHz. I just had to do some attempt. The only flaw, as I said, is the light of the hard disk, which does not turn on, cause I haven't had the opportunity to put the jumper anywhere, neither on the MOBO or the drive itself. So I don't know, maybe I will leave it disconnected or I connect it to a 5V rail and leave it on. I want as many lights as possible on this thing. I added a battery, or rather 4 AA batteries, but apparently 6V are not enough, cause I have to continuously enter the information in the BIOS at each shutdown, even if several benchmarks have detected the battery. Speaking of benchmarks, let's stop talking about hardware and let's take a look at the software side of the thing. First of all, transferring games and programs from a Windows 98. Well, it didn't work much. As you can see, I have connected both PCs with Interlink and Inter-server, setting Windows 98 as a server and the new 486 as client, but although the client has recognized the Windows 98 hard disk, it seems that it can only read corrupt data, therefore I don't know where the problem lies, if in Windows 98, in 486, in the operating system, in the drivers. I really have no idea. So I decided that I will write some CDs and copy games and programs as well. Unfortunately, I only have a couple of empty CDs at home, and as I explained at the beginning of the video, I am not allowed to leave my house to Buimor, also because I will not find any, the shop are currently closed, so I can transfer few things at the moment, but I will find a way shortly. Okay, I took a proper CRT monitor from the basement so we can enjoy its glory in VGA. I'll briefly describe the routine he is performing. First, load the BIOS extension of EZ drive, which allows you to recognize the 4GB of the hard disk and the 3 DOS partitions into which I divided it. Immediately afterwards, it opens the driver package menu that I downloaded from Phil's Computer Lab, which allows you to boot deliciously according to your needs, with CD-ROM support, mouse, expanded memory and extended memory, or none of them. I will choose the first option, which is expanded memory plus CD-ROM plus mouse. Then Interlink is executed, which finds no computer to connect with. Then the sound card drivers are loaded, the CD-ROM drivers are loaded, and the drive noisily come to life. And finally, the mouse drivers are loaded. At this point, we have access to the prompt. I open the SDD folder, which contains the UniVBE utility, which allows DOS application written according to the Visa standards to be displayed correctly. The utility informs us that it has updated the BIOS extension to a more recent version and has added some goodies. Now let's do some benchmarks to see how well this computer is doing. Let's start with 3D Bench for fast computers. Which gives us a result of 41.3. Chris VGA benchmark gave me a score of 44, while SVGA, well, didn't go well. But you can't expect good results if your video card does not support SVGA, so that's okay. The score, however, is 11 for 7 frames per second. The Quake demo does not start in 640 by 480, and the normal version does not do beta. It starts but reaches 6.5 FPS, therefore basically unplayable. Let's go with system information. Which rewards us with a score of 91. Conveniently, we can compare ourselves to a 486DX2-Based with a ST251-1, which I own, and it is really slow. Both VGA boosts have not worked. I tried to win the version of Quake at 360 by 480, but I get 2.9 FPS, which is slightly below the optimal. And now let's play some games. The first on the list is Doom, of course. It is quite fluid. It is the old good Doom that I played on dozens of other computers and consoles. Duke Nukem 3D is equally fluid in normal 320 by 200 mode, but in 800 by 600 mode it goes like this. So I would say not exactly ideal. Monkey Island instead runs like a piece of cake. I've also tried other games like Prince of Persia and Vinyl Goddess from Mars, and they are all good. Vinyl Goddess sometimes crashes, but I think it's my version of the game which is questionable. We have come to the end, it's time of conclusions. There is one thing I cannot fail to repeat: I love the aesthetic aspect of this computer. Many could argue that, the CD drive is too new compared to the other components, it is not correct, moreover the plates are yellowed and do not match the color of the case and blah blah blah. But I really like this. If it had been a branded computer, such as an Olivetti or even a Commodore 64, and if I had taken it yellowed, I would have bleached it. But these colors that do not match the different aesthetic lines, the yellowing, arouse a strong nostalgic component of me. They remind me of my childhood, when we didn't have a computer at home, and the only one I used were these giant chests, probably 486 or at most Pentium 1, old already then, with Windows 95 at school. Due to its nature as a heap of recovery anachronistic components, I see this computer as an open project to be able to indulge myself. I already have some ideas on different video audio cards in mind. I can install another vintage operating system on unused partitions, maybe something Unix-like. I can mount Windows 3.1. For me, it's a long valley in which I hope to plant beautiful flowers. So, I hope you enjoyed these 486 builds. Thanks for looking all the way to the end of the video, and see ya next time.